Hello and welcome to Anfield after we've just watched Liverpool beating or drawing even with Spurs. Good result for Liverpool maybe, but not so great for Tottenham. Both sides would have liked the victory, and of course if Leicester win tomorrow against Southampton at home, that puts them 7 points clear at the top of the Premier League. That's a real clawback for anyone wanting to chase them. A few questions coming in already, and the first one we've got is from Vicky Gaskin, who asks the question, was that 1 point gained or 2 lost for Tottenham? Well, I think you have to look at that as 1 point or 2 points lost, should I say. Really, they needed victory here today to increase the pressure on Leicester City. At one point it looked like they might go away empty-handed when Coutinho gave Liverpool a lead, but then Kane's superb goal that ended up giving Spurs a draw, but they had a couple of chances at the end. They would have loved to have taken them, but sadly they got away, and the agony on the face of Mauricio Pochettino at the end told the story really. I think he feels disappointed that a chance has got away here. Always a tough game coming to Liverpool, but this was one that they really felt they could win. Liverpool did well, Coutinho outstanding for them. For Tottenham, Dembele and Lloris. And Lloris, a little bit of a worry at the end. He picked up an injury and Spurs will be monitoring that closely. First question's coming in now, one from Chris Neil Evans, who says, do I think West Ham will make the Champions League? Well, I certainly think they've got the potential to make the Champions League, but life's a little bit more difficult for them after that 2-2 draw with Crystal Palace today. I think Slaven Bilic will feel that it was, again, a bit like Spurs here, a chance missed when they got that lead. Palace with that poor record in the Premier League since the turn of the year. In the end, 2-2 draw. Palace will be much happier than that with that than West Ham. So still in contention, but I think a chance missed today. Irene Lucy McKenna asked me, was it a fair result in Anfield today? I think yes, in the end it was. In the first half, Liverpool dominated, some fine saves from Lloris, a couple from Lallana, one from Sturridge that really Sturridge should have done better with. Spurs had their opportunities as well. Not clinical enough in the final third for me, but the goal from Harry Kane, absolutely superb. Eriksen chases a lost cause, plays it into Kane, who turns and scores brilliantly. A couple of chances near the end. Overall, I think possibly Liverpool just edged it, but in the end a draw, a fair result. Leon McGilson asked me, will Leicester be able to handle the pressure? Well, they've handled it so far, and we are entering the last sort of straight, if you like, now, with the last 6 or 7 games. They've handled it so far, no reason why not. I think tomorrow's a really big day for Leicester City. If they can beat Southampton and extend that lead at the top to 7 points with just 6 games left, that is a really, really decisive advantage. And it would take something close to a Leicester collapse, I think, to hand the title to somebody else. So, again, we'll find out again tomorrow, can they handle the pressure? But they've shown nothing so far to suggest that they can't. So let's see what they can do tomorrow. Matt Wheatley asked me, what do I make of West Brom's season? Well, neither here nor there really. They're not going to get relegated, they're not going to get in the top places. It's a bit of a holding season really. I think disappointing in many ways. The football's not been great at the Hawthorns. Depends what you want really if you're a West Brom fan. Relegation was something that Tony Pulis was brought in to ensure was never an issue. Again, I think that's going to be the case. But are you expecting more? Are you expecting better football? Are you expecting top 6 places? It's a question of expectation, but I think really a holding season and neither here nor there, to be honest. Lewis Smile asked me, will Rafa stay if Newcastle get relegated? Good question. Of course, we know in his contract he has a clause that says he can leave. There's a break clause in it if Leicester are relegated. That was a terrible blow for them at Norwich City today, having fought back twice to get into the game. Then to concede that goal right at the end is a dreadful blow. And of course, the double blow is that it gives Norwich City a great lift and gives them the feeling that they can now get away from it. There's a gap opened up. Big morale booster for them. They've shown some character to come back from being pegged back twice. So it's a real blow. I suspect if Newcastle go down, Rafa Benitez might get offers from elsewhere that he might want to take. So I certainly wouldn't bank on him being there if Newcastle get relegated. He's a manager with a big reputation throughout Europe. And I suspect if they get relegated, he may get preferable offers from elsewhere. For Newcastle fans, let's hope that's not the case. Connor Simoski asked me a similar question. Are Newcastle down now? Well, as I said, it's a blow, but they're not down. There's still a few games left. And don't write off Benitez. I mean, he's very much an acquired taste as a manager. So he's quite a divisive figure, but he's a great strategist. He will still be thinking he can keep Newcastle up, working away on the training ground as he always does. I do think, and obviously it will take a lot to cheer Newcastle fans after what happened at Carrow Road today, that they have a much better chance of staying up under Rafa Benitez than they did under Steve McLaren, even though he is still searching for his first victory. As I say, that was an awful blow for them today, but we'll see. I think Rafa Benitez is a very, very good manager, and I think he might thrive in this situation. Bad position for Newcastle, but I still think he might get them out of it. James Russell asked me, do I think Arsenal will hold a place in the top four? Yes, I do. I mean, I think Arsenal will feel they still have chances, outside chances of the title after beating Watford 4-0 today. But again, I suspect with Arsenal, they might have left it just a little bit too late. The pressure's off a little bit out of the Champions League, out of the FA Cup, and suddenly they're coming strong again. Have they left it too late, and will they be left with regrets? Well, I think they possibly will be, and it won't be the first time in recent memory either. Neil Austin asked me, will Norwich City survive? Well, as we said earlier, they've got a better chance than they had earlier this afternoon. That's a great win for them. Not only 3 points for them, but 3 points taken off people they would regard as very, very close rivals in Newcastle United. They've got Sunderland coming up at home, I think Crystal Palace away. Again, decisive games to Norwich City, but that's a great result for them today, and that will send spirits soaring around Carrow Road, and they will now really be starting to feel they can stay up. Ibra Udini asked me, will Sunderland go to the Championship? Well, again, only a draw for them today. They would have been hoping for a victory at home to West Brom. Sam Allardyce is the expert of navigating a way out of these situations, but I think Norwich's late victory against Newcastle is making it doubly difficult for all the teams who are looking to survive. I think obviously we can forget Aston Villa, but Sunderland and Newcastle will have high hopes of getting out of it, but today hasn't done them really any favours. Sunderland needed a win, and obviously Newcastle needed something from Norwich. Norwich have won, pushed themselves further ahead, so I think both the clubs in the North East face a real battle to survive now. Lance Avery asks, what do I think the next move is for Arsenal? Well, I assume you're talking about the manager's future there. Well, all the signs we're getting is that Wenger will be there next season, come what may. I mean, I made my views clear on this a couple of weeks ago, and I said that I felt that if he didn't win anything this season, and only really obviously the title left for him now, that he would have to consider his position. It had been too long without a title chase. But we've heard from Alisher Usmanov, one of the big shareholders at Arsenal, if not the major shareholder, that he feels Arsenal must foster their main asset, which is Wenger. We've heard from Wenger this week saying that he's 100% committed. He fully expects to be there next season. Arsenal just isn't the club that changes. So for the views of myself who think things should be considered at the end of the season if they end empty-handed, I don't think they will. I think in reality he'll be there next season, and we may well be hearing the same sort of stories next season about how they're going to do this, that and the other, but really it's time they made a serious title challenge. And I suppose after that win today they might just still think they can sneak up on the rails, but really now this is Leicester City's Premier League title to lose. Richie Meehan asked me, when will Louis van Gaal leave Manchester United? Well, who knows? I mean, we've thought he's been leaving on various occasions this season, and there's still lots of speculation that he might go at the end of the season. We'll see. It's Mourinho camp are pushing, trying to get United into position to take him on at the end of the season, but really, the signals coming out of United are still not decisive. Sir Alex Ferguson seemed to support Van Gaal, seemed to suggest that he deserves time and trust and patience, but we'll see at the end of the season. I think if he doesn't finish in the top four and doesn't win a trophy, I personally think that's the end for him. But he's still in there with the chance of the top four, big game against Everton tomorrow, and could still reach the FA Cup final and win it. So if he wins top four and a trophy, who knows? As I say, I don't think anything's been decided yet, despite all the speculation. Craig Gutteridge asked me, can Villa still survive? Simple answer to that, Craig, no. Alexander Gibbs Jr., do I think Leicester City will win the league? Well, I think they're in a great position. Myself, like many others, have been waiting for them to stumble this season, and yet they just haven't. They've kept going and going. Crucial away wins at places like Crystal Palace and at Watford. Big win late at home to Norwich City. It was when Ulloa scored in the dying seconds. These are the wins that wins titles. If you look back over many years, it's not been a question of the big wins, the 3-0s, the 4-0s. It's been the ability to grind out those 1-0s late on when it counts. And Leicester City have got the habit of champions in the last few weeks, and they have got a great chance, but they really need that win tomorrow. If they can push themselves 7 points clear with 6 games left, what an opportunity for them. And we're now entering the stage that if they do that, they will kick themselves if they don't win it. And what a story it will be. It will be the greatest story in Premier League history. It will be one of the greatest stories in British sporting history. A team that's come from nowhere, from fighting relegation 1 year without major transfer input, to winning the title the next year. Spurs fans won't like anyone for saying, but they are the neutral choice. Everybody outside Tottenham wants to win the league, and I think if they win tomorrow, they will be making a giant stride towards doing that. Lewis Smile asked me the same question about Benitez. As I said, I think he'll go if Newcastle go down, but they'll be hoping that isn't the case. Christopher Cassidy asked me, do I think Liverpool will get top four? I don't. I think to maintain the slightest chance of getting the top four, then I think they had to win today. They played pretty well. I think they're an improving side under Klopp, despite the blips we've seen when they conceded that 2-goal lead at Southampton. I think they're coming on. I think they're showing signs of being the sort of side Klopp wants. You won't see the real Klopp Liverpool, if you like, until next season, but certainly I think they're improving. But I don't think the top four this season. But don't forget, they're still in the Europa League, admittedly having drawn the favourites in Borussia Dortmund, and there's a Champions League place available there. So the opportunity is still open for them, but I don't think it'll come through the Premier League. Ash Gilbert asked me, will Aston Villa's slump continue next season? Will it lead them to League One? Well, lots of people look at that squad now, myself included, and think there's no way that's coming straight back up. But I think we're in for a time of big change at Aston Villa in the summer. They're looking for a new manager. Obviously, there are some boardroom manoeuvres behind the scenes. Brian Little's in now, David Bernstein, very respected figure who worked for the FA and was at Manchester City, is there. Adrian Bevington's got great contacts at the FA, he's in as well. So they're moving things behind the scenes, and what they've got to make sure now is that this is not some sort of shuffling of the deck chairs on the Titanic, if you like. They've got to get the right people in place behind the scenes, but most importantly of all, they've got to pick the right manager. I don't think Remy Gard was a bad manager, but I think he was the wrong manager in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it was never going to work for him. Obviously, I think the best choice they could possibly get is David Moyes. I think background in British football, worked in sort of the lower divisions before his ascent to Everton, if you like. Very well respected. He will shake that squad up. He will get it in shape, and I think he's the sort of man they need. It might be a big job to persuade him to take it. If not, then I think they need to be looking at someone like Nigel Pearson. Pawson distance, if you like, took Leicester City up, managed to navigate them out of the trouble they were in last season, and I think they've got a chance, but I think they need to go British with their manager. They've got things on the move behind the scenes, but when you look at that squad, it absolutely needs ripping apart, because there are so many players there who are either finished at the top level or just simply not good enough. The buying policy has been absolutely shambolic. In fact, the whole running of the club has been shambolic for the last few years. If you buy bad players, if you let good players go, there's only one place you end up, and that's the Championship. Their job now is to make sure they get out of the Championship and don't go any further back down into League One, as you say. Nate Warnock asked me, are Palace going to go down? Good point for them today. I don't think Palace will go down. I think it's been a disappointing season, because at the start of the season, when they were bringing people like Johan Cabaye on the back of a very decent season last season, I think you were looking at maybe top 10, top 12 place, which would have been very respectable. But since the turn of the year, they've just lost their way completely. I watched them a couple of times earlier this season. They looked a very good side. But in the Premier League at least, although they're still in the FA Cup, they've just lost their way. Maybe today's point, a hard-won point at a tough place like West Ham, will get them back on the road for the last few games of the season. I don't think they'll get relegated, but again, they'll be disappointed that they haven't done better this season. Chris A.W. Billsley asked me, do I think Swansea will stay up? Yes, I do. I think that was a good point for them today at Stoke City. I think, again, after last season and the way they played under Gary Monk, disappointment this season. I think they need to just get through to the end of the season, almost write it off, if you like. And the rumours that Brendan Rodgers might be going back there, I think that would be a really good move. I think he's a manager who knows the background of the club, knows the way it's run, knows the sort of football that's required at Swansea City. And despite the tame ending and disappointing ending to his time at Liverpool, I still think Brendan Rodgers has got an awful lot to offer as a manager, and I think Swansea will suit him perfectly and will be as good a job as he's going to get in the Premier League. So I think Swansea and Rodgers, if they can put it together, despite efforts from Guidolin and of course Alan Curtis this season, I think they can be ready to go again at the start of next season. Alex Cross asked me, do I think Wolves will qualify for Europe? Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Alex, but I suspect that might not be the case. Paul David James Welford says, should Tottenham invest a lot in the transfer market? Well, there's always room for big transfers and improved players, but I think Tottenham are really on the way to having a very fine side. Young and English base to the side, but with outstanding players like Lloris and Dembele, who I thought was magnificent at Anfield today. And of course, up front they've got Harry Kane, who is outstanding goal scorer, 22nd goal of the season, I think it was today. I think they've got the base and the foundations of a very fine side. If they can add one or two, maybe, I don't know, in the full-back positions or strengthening midfield, but I think I look at them and I think they look at an all-round very fine side. I think they can develop next season. Of course, they may even win the title this season. Be interesting to see where Pochettino strengthens, but I do think the foundations are there for Tottenham to really push on. Neil Brimage asked me, do I think Roberto Martinez will ever change the colour of his shoes? Well, they've been brown for as long as I can remember. Maybe after 2 dreadful seasons in the Premier League for Everton, he might want to change it, look, maybe black or blue or orange or something. But having studied Roberto's fashion for the last 2 or 3 seasons, and while he was at Wigan, I don't see any change in those brown shoes. And also, I think he might have bigger things to worry about come the end of the season if Everton don't win the FA Cup and they don't improve their league form, which has been shocking this season. I think he might be trying to talk his way into sort of a future at Everton next season, rather worrying about the colour of his shoes. But no, it's a good point you're making, a good question. Jake Holloway asked me which player has impressed me most this season. Well, I think Dele Alli has been outstanding for Tottenham. Sorry to be a bit of a cliche and go on with the same subject as other people have. I think he's been absolutely outstanding. He's a great player for the future. But if you want someone away from that, someone who I've been impressed with every time I've seen him, has been outstanding and could end with a title medal, it's N'Golo Kante of Leicester City. I've said this before, £6.5 million I think it was from Cayenne in France. Premier League clubs will be asking their scouting system when they see him playing for Leicester, what happened there, why did we miss him, was he just off the radar, did they look and just didn't think he was good enough? Leicester took gamble, you call it a gamble, it certainly wasn't at £6.5 million, and he has been fantastic this season. I think he's been one of the players of the year, along with 2 or 3 others like Mahrez and Vardy at Leicester, but Kante's held it together and he has been outstanding. Kurs Larson, or Kurs Leeson, I beg your pardon, asked me Everton's season in one word and why. Frustrating. Why? Well, they've got the best squad I think they've had for 20 years, and they've just been dreadful in the league. Not so bad away from home, but that home record, 16 games, 8 defeats, 4 draws, 4 wins, and those wins against Aston Villa, Sunderland, Newcastle and a Chelsea side who were falling apart under Jose Mourinho. An embarrassment, really, an embarrassment to the manager, an embarrassment to the players. And I do think Everton are now looking to try and win the FA Cup to salvage something, or more than salvage something, because it would be their first trophy in 21 years. But they need something tangible like that, I think, for Roberto Martinez to go into an end-of-season review feeling quite safe. There's a new major shareholder at Everton, Farhad Moshiri. All we hear is Champions League ambitions. And, well, has Martinez done enough to keep his job next season? If he wins the Cup, of course he has. No one can argue with that. If he doesn't, then I think he'll face serious questions. Ben Nutt asked me, is Kane a £60 million player? Well, in today's market and the way he scores goals, and that one today was an absolute beauty. I mean, the way he can turn in the box and finish, you know, and he's a big guy as well, so he's nimble on his feet, light on his feet, he can turn and finish. And I think he is of the highest class, and I think if Tottenham put him on the market tomorrow, and they won't, they would get £60 million for him. Richie Meehan asked me, will Manchester United buy big in the summer? Well, I think they will, yes, I think they'll have to. It depends on who the manager is, of course. I think they need strengthening in central defence. I think they're unconvincing there. Chris Smalling, probably the best of the defenders, but even he has problems positionally, if you like. I think they'll need to strengthen there. I think they need more authority in midfield. Michael Carrick's 34 at the back end of his career. Same can be said about Schweinsteiger. Schneiderlin hasn't made the impact I thought he'd have. So I think key areas they need to strengthen, central defence and in central midfield. But one bonus that they will have next season is that Luke Shaw will be back, and he was showing exactly why everybody rated him so highly when he suffered that badly broken leg against PSV. He'll be back fairly soon. Whether it's soon enough for the Euros, I don't know. Probably not. But he will be a great addition because he is a top player and will really give United an added dimension, both in defence at left back and also going forward, where he's a very, very attack-minded player. William Finn asked me, do I think Arsenal will finish above Spurs? Well, the answer to that, William, I would say is no. I'm just looking at the league table, and where are they now? They are what? They are 4 points behind Spurs with the game in hand. Well, there's a possibility, but at the moment, I think Spurs will finish above them. Anthony Armstrong asked me, why was the referee at the Liverpool Spurs game so poor? Well, yes, he did make 1 or 2 rather odd decisions. One which had Jurgen Klopp with his head in his hands at the end. He just couldn't believe a decision. I think it was a goal kick was given when he thought it was a corner. Not a great display by the referee, although it wasn't his fault. Everybody thought he'd given a penalty in the first half when in fact he'd given a goal kick. I'm asked here, will Chelsea qualify the Europa League? Well, they're in 10th place now with 44 points. I think, even though they won today, I think the gap is too much, and the ground they lost in those early months of the season simply left them too much ground to make up anywhere. I think that's a fading squad in need of real renovation. So, no, I don't think there'll be any European football at Stamford Bridge next season. Edward Ashton, good question this from Edward Ashton. Would I sell Mahrez for £50 million? Well, judging from what Claudio Ranieri said, Leicester are not averse to a big offer for their players, and I suspect if they got £50 million for Mahrez, they would take it. Fine player that he is. I think reality would dictate that if somebody slapped £50 million on the table, you'd take that and then try and reinvest it very wisely. Daniel Newman, this is a funny question because people have asked this a few times. Is it possible that Leicester City could go down next year? Well, they've come from relegation to potential title winners this season, so I suppose there's every chance they would go down the other way next season. My own view is no. I think there's too much in that squad. I think I would be very surprised if they were struggling next season. I can see them certainly being the top reaches of the division, maybe not quite as high as this dream season they've had, but who knows? I mean, we all wrote them off. I, for one, had them down for relegations in my notoriously accurate tips before the start of the season, but I certainly can't see them struggling next season. I think they'll be in the upper reaches of the Premier League, providing they keep their key players, and I'm talking Vardy, Mahrez, Kante. If they can do that and add one or two others, then absolutely no struggles to them next season. I can't comment on this one from Danny Hyam, who asked me that another referee has robbed West Ham 2 game-changing decisions. I'm afraid I haven't seen that, sorry Danny, so I can't comment, though I have heard 1 or 2 remarks from West Ham that suggest they were hard done by. I'll have a look at it on Match of the Day later. Anubhav Raj Singh asked me, will Manchester United finish top 4 with all the players coming back from injuries? He thinks they will. I think they might just finish outside. They've got a real chance, I suppose. They're in there. They're in 6th position at the moment, 4 points behind Manchester City with a game in hand. So they're in with a shout, but I think Manchester City with De Bruyne back, Arsenal keeping winning, I think Manchester United might just finish out the top 4. But they will certainly feel they've got a chance, and rightly so. Martin Slater asked me, do I think Newcastle can stay up now? Well, I refer you back to some early answers. I think they can, but they've got a real fight on their hands. But as I say, if you're clutching at anything, I do think they've got a better chance under Rafa Benitez than they had under Steve McClaren. But that defeat today has done a lot of damage. Jack Porter asked me, do I think Liverpool should keep or sell Benteke? Well, I personally think they'll sell him because he just doesn't fit here. Didn't fit when they bought him, and Tim Sherwood, possibly tongue-in-cheek, said when Liverpool signed Benteke, why is he joining a club that never puts a cross in? And he did have a point, tongue-in-cheek, even though he may be. I just don't think Liverpool's style of football, firstly under Brendan Rodgers and now under Jurgen Klopp, suits Christian Benteke. I'm not sure he's up to the intense pressing style that Klopp will demand, and also under Rodgers there was more of a passing style that didn't result in many crosses. So possibly just the wrong place at the wrong time for Benteke. But what I will say is I think Benteke is a good player. I think if you give him the correct service, crosses into the box, balls through the channels. He's proved he can score goals at Aston Villa and score goals in a side that wasn't doing great in the Premier League. So I think Liverpool will sell Benteke. I think they'll go in another direction. But I also think that if the right club signs him, he'll be back scoring goals again, because I do rate him. I think the way it's gone this season for him, yes, he's missed quite a few chances lately. I just think that's an inevitable lack of confidence just because of the way the early months of the season have gone for him. Almost summed up by the fact that he's got a knee injury now that's going to keep him out for another month. So it looks like he will sort of roll towards the end of this season. The big question is, of course, Liverpool paid £32.5 million for him. I don't see anybody offering them anything like that. They might have to take the hit on it, but I do think if he went elsewhere, he'd start scoring goals again, provided he got the right service. Ryan Meir asked me, do I think Spurs have a chance of winning the Premier League? Well, of course they do. They're 4 points behind Leicester City, maybe played 1 game more, but they're right in the hunt. They'll be hoping that Southampton can do them a turn tomorrow at the King Power Stadium. But I do think that they could have done with a victory here today. The draw's not a bad result, but it's not really the one they would have wanted. Ali Gibbons asked me, do I think Liverpool will make the Champions League? They might make it through the Europa League if they can get past Borussia Dortmund. Don't see them making it through the Premier League. Ruggiero Di Lecce asked me opinions on Brendan Rodgers to Swansea. Well, I gave them earlier. I think it's a great fit. I think they talk about never going back, but that's a good club for him to go back to. He will know the style of football they want. He's a manager, a young manager, relatively young manager, still learning. I think that would be a very good appointment. Couple more to go here. Katie Louise Knight asked me Manchester City or Manchester United for fourth. I think Manchester City, on the evidence of De Bruyne being back, 4-0 win today. Maybe they can just start kicking on and producing at least something like their real form between now and the end of the season. Another question here, do Leicester City deserve to be first? Of course they do. The best team in the league so far this season, play great football, that great fast counter-attacking football, and have got more points than anybody else, so yes, they deserve to be top. Last couple now. Luke Spence asks, will West Ham United get top four? Well, again, they're in with a shout, but I think they could have done with a win today. It's a bit of a damaging result for them, that one, only drawing at home to Crystal Palace, with Manchester City winning so convincingly away to Bournemouth. So I think they'll possibly miss out now. Another question here, which I've taken off Twitter. Do I think Romelu Lukaku will stay at Everton next season? I personally don't, and I think the blame doesn't necessarily lie with him. I think the blame might lie more at the door of the manager, Roberto Martinez, who has not delivered the top four place with a squad that was certainly capable of being much higher than 12th, and certainly capable of fighting their way into those positions near the top. The thing to remember is, though, that lots of people seem to be forgetting this. Lukaku's got 3 years left on his contract, so Everton don't have to sell him. With the new investment they've got from Mashiri, they're under no financial pressure to sell him. So someone will have to come up with a very big offer, and if it's not good enough, Everton are well within their rights just to say, no, sorry, you get on with it, Romelu, you stay here. Same as they did with John Stones last season. So while I think if a massive offer comes in, and I'm talking 60 million here, then Everton will consider it. I don't believe Everton will just roll over and sell Lukaku. I think it will have to be the right offer for them, and if it isn't, they will just say no, and they're in a position to say no, and I wouldn't blame them for saying no either. Anyway, that's about 26 minutes. You're probably sick of the sight of me by now, but thank you very much for all of your questions. We'll do it again soon. And thanks again, and let's see how Leicester go on against Southampton tomorrow.